In the history of the Second World War, some battles are defined not just by the soldiers who fought, but by the very ground they fought on. This is the story of one of those places. The year is 1942. The world is engulfed in war. The tide of Imperial Japanese expansion has swept relentlessly across the Pacific. And now, that shadow is falling on the very doorstep of Australia. And it's right here, deep in the remote, unforgiving mountains of Papua New Guinea, that one of the most desperate battles for survival is about to unfold, all along a single, narrow, muddy footpath known as the Kokoda Track. The whole campaign really hinged on one strategic prize, the small coastal town of Port Moresby. For the Allied forces, it was a vital airbase, their last real defensive line. But for the Japanese, it was a gateway. You see, if Port Moresby fell, a direct invasion of Australia would suddenly become a terrifying, very real possibility. So in July of 1942, seasoned forces of the Imperial Japanese Army landed on the northern coast. Their plan was as audacious as it was brutal: cross the towering Owen Stanley Range along the Kokoda Track and take Port Moresby by land. But they were about to find out that the land itself was going to be an enemy. The track was a vertical nightmare. We're talking about soldiers literally clawing their way up treacherous slopes, each breath a searing gasp in the thin, humid air. And then there was the mud. Constant monsoon rains turned the track into a quagmire, a river of slick, energy-sapping mud that they said could swallow a man whole. You have to understand, the jungle wasn't just a backdrop to this war. It was an active combatant. Disease, exhaustion, and the dense, disorienting wilderness, it all made this narrow footpath one of the deadliest battlefields on the entire planet. Standing in the path of this Japanese advance were Australian soldiers. They were given the task of defending this impossible terrain, fighting not only a determined enemy, but the jungle itself. And just look at the mismatch. On one side, you have young, inexperienced Australian militia troops. They were cruelly called chocos, short for chocolate soldiers, because people thought they just melt in the jungle heat. Outnumbered and ill-equipped, they stood against battle-hardened veterans of the Japanese Imperial Army, who were absolutely relentless in their push south. What followed were fierce, desperate battles at places like Isarava and Brigade Hill. The Australians, exhausted and overwhelmed, were forced into a slow, fighting withdrawal back towards Port Moresby. But they never broke. Every single ridge, every muddy valley, became a testament to their incredible grit. They simply refused to surrender the track. But in this brutal fight for survival, something truly unexpected happened. A profound alliance was forged. The Australian soldiers started receiving crucial, life-saving help from the local people of Papua New Guinea. They became known affectionately as the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels. These men would transport vital ammunition and food up to the front lines, and then, with just incredible compassion, they would carry the wounded soldiers back down, navigating those treacherous trails with such care, ensuring the injured survived the perilous journey. Their bravery was just immense. A powerful bond was forged in that crucible of war. And let's be clear, without the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, Australian casualties would have been catastrophic. Their actions became this powerful, enduring story of humanity and friendship rising above the absolute horrors of conflict. By September, the seemingly unstoppable Japanese advance finally began to falter. The very jungle that had tormented the Australians now turned its fury on the attackers, and the tide of the campaign began its slow, grueling turn. So, that initial Japanese push in July was relentless. But by September, their supply lines were completely collapsing. The terrain was just too difficult, the jungle canopy too dense, resupply by air was nearly futile. Carrying equipment over those mountains was a losing battle. Soon, starvation and tropical diseases like malaria and dysentery were just ravaging their ranks. And as they weakened, reinforced Allied troops launched a counterattack, pushing the exhausted Japanese forces back along that exact same muddy track. The battle for the Kokoda Track was finally over by early 1943. The cost was immense, but its significance in the course of the war and in the identity of a nation was absolutely profound. So why does Kokoda matter so much? Well, this victory was pivotal. It was one of the first major land defeats for Japan in the entire Pacific War. It decisively stopped their southward advance, and it really marked a critical turning point. Today, the name Kokoda stands as this powerful symbol of incredible human endurance and as a lasting testament to the shared history and sacrifice that binds Australia and Papua New Guinea together. The story of Kokoda is so much more than just military history. It's a story of courage, of sacrifice, and of the powerful bonds that can be forged in the most extreme conditions you can imagine. It really leaves us to reflect on a fundamental question. In the face of that kind of adversity, what is the true cost of survival?